but they also have the lowest kills this split among playoff teams with 184. How much concern is there for Rogue going into the playoffs? Can they even make a deep run?
I believe they can make a deep run. I think if you look at the talent on the team, I don't think anyone would be surprised if they make a deep run to Origin in that kind of like third place quarterfinal match to, maybe play Fnatic or G2 in the semifinals. But this weekend was very, very difficult to watch as as one of the generals of the Rogue bandwagon, where this entire season, the early game has been so clean, and they've had mishaps in the mid game that kind of looked amateurish and kind of brought them off the trail. Like, their early game is still very strong. It's the strongest in the LEC going into this past weekend, and then they just kind of embarrassed themselves, losing to SK and Schalke. Schalke looking far better with their new lineup. But there's a lot to be concerned about. They did not look good online. Finn looked bad on Maokai and Aurelia, so I really hope that they can bring it together in the playoffs, because this team has the talent. They just need to show it in this online format.
Like we mentioned, they were the 6th ranked team, the last team going into the playoffs. They're also riding a 4-game losing streak, so I don't know if you believe in momentum, if the regular season doesn't matter and all that matters is the playoffs and everything is a clean slate there. But Mad Lions is a team that does have momentum, Emily, and they defeated Origin to remain in 4th, a very impressive win there. First new roster since leaving the Splice name. They get into the playoffs. Are you impressed? Are you impressed enough that you think they have what it takes to make a good playoff run?
So it was interesting listening to a lot of the interviews in LEC this past week, where they asked some players who they thought kind of the most dangerous team going into playoffs is, and a few of them said Mad Lions. And I think the reason for that is because we still have no idea like how good they can be. We just know that they can be better than what they are now, which has been anything from like incredible moments of brilliance to like, typical things we expect from rookie teams and rookie players, where they'll make mistakes around vision, or they'll pick fights when they don't have, their item spikes correctly, or some of their drafting, especially like mid-season, was, in my opinion, a little suspect. So I think the big thing about Mad Lions and their victory over Origin is that it shouldn't be a shock to anyone who's watched this team, but the problem with Mad Lions, as always, is just that we cannot rely on them to be consistent, which is just another thing that often happens with a lot of these like teams that are just plucking, young talent and moving them up through Europe. So I think for Mad Lions, for me, what I'm really looking forward to with this roster is seeing them going into summer, presumably. And again, like something that we'll probably address maybe later in the show is that because there's a shorter break, it actually means that teams might be making less moves. And that aside, I don't see any reason why Mad Lions would change their lineup anyway. So with this lineup, another split to go through, I think they're going to be an incredibly formidable team. And I don't think anyone who has watched this team, this split, should be super surprised that they defeated Origin, especially since I still consider Origin to be a little bit slow and exploitable in their early game.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Mad Lions is what Rogue want to be, right? And I think that, or I guess the inverse is what we said previously.
You brought up before that like Mad Lions was like on the Rogue trajectory, so it's interesting to hear you say that, James.
But I think they've surpassed them, right? So then that's why I say the inverse is I think that these are both teams who sort of pulled up all these players from the European regional leagues and really sort of built around talent, focused on talent development, from a team environment perspective. And I think that in that regard, that Mad Lions has really sort of pushed forward in a way that Rogue has not been able to. And I think that for Rogue to be able to take the next step, they certainly need to be able to focus from a coaching perspective. I'd like to see them invest a little bit more out of the game as well. I don't think that necessarily the talent is the issue, but we've seen that in Mad Lions, and I think that that's the next step for Rogue.